Hi, I'm Bella and I'm a new intern for the Colorado Mountain Club. Have a new DSLR camera you want to take out on the trails but aren't sure how to use it? Or do you want to buy a new camera and are a little unsure of how to get started and overwhelmed by the amount of buttons it has? Today we are going to learn about the 3 main adjustments to achieve a perfectly exposed photo with your new camera. In this video, I'm using my Canon EOS Mark III. There are many different brands and interfaces, but all DSLR cameras work with light in the same way. Once you learn the basics, you will be able to adjust to any camera model with practice. Before you go out into the field and start shooting, be sure to locate the image quality panel in your menu. Change the setting to RAW. This will give you more editing freedom later on. A good photo is captured with a blend of the 3 most important settings. Today I'm going to show you the basics of each setting so you can become more confident with a DSLR. Each setting is responsible for capturing light in a different way, and they work together to create a photograph. Before you know it, you'll be able to capture the perfect shot and be out in the mountains or on the trails with your new camera. The first important setting is aperture, or the opening in a lens through which light passes to enter the camera. It is expressed in f numbers like f1.4, f2, f2.8 to express the size of the lens opening. This setting is normally represented by the letters AF and can be adjusted with a dial. Aperture is measured by the amount of light allowed to enter the camera. The smaller the f-stop, the larger the opening is for light to enter. The larger the f-stop, the smaller the opening is and less light is allowed to enter the camera. At lower f-stops, the subject you are trying to take a photo of will appear more in focus and the background will be more blurred. If you're shooting with a larger f-stop, that will keep both your subject and the background in focus. Smaller f-stops will decrease your depth of field, whereas larger ones will increase it, bringing landscapes completely into focus. For example, this flower was shot at a 2.5 aperture, bringing the flower completely into focus and blurring out the background. On the other hand, this is the same shot with a different aperture set at 9. This will bring your background into focus rather than focusing on the subject closest to you. Smaller apertures between 1.8 and 2.5 are good for portraits or close-ups where you want to have a more dramatic effect on the overall photo. Larger f-stops are good for landscapes and other photos where you want the entire background to be in focus along with the foreground. The second most important setting is shutter speed, or the length of time a camera shutter is open, exposing light onto the camera sensor. The shutter speed can also be adjusted with a dial and can range anywhere from 30 seconds for a long exposure to 1/8000th of a second for a faster shot. Shutter speed has a few important effects on how your images will appear. When you use a long shutter speed, you will end up exposing your sensor for a significant period of time. The first big effect is motion blur. If your shutter speed is long, moving subjects in your photo will appear blurred along the direction of motion. Shutter speed can also be used to do just the opposite, freeze motion. If you use an especially high shutter speed, you can eliminate motion even from fast-moving objects like birds in flight, or in this case, runners. Landscape photographers may intentionally use long shutter speeds to create a sense of motion on rivers and waterfalls while keeping everything else sharp. While using low shutter speeds, it is best to use a tripod to keep your image in focus. If you use a fast shutter speed while taking pictures of water, each droplet will sharpen, which may not even be visible to our own eyes. In summary, quick shutter speeds freeze action, while longer ones create an effect of motion when you photograph moving objects. The final setting we are going to talk about is ISO, which measures the light sensitivity of the image sensor. The higher the ISO, the more sensitive it is to light. When shooting outdoors, it is best to use a lower ISO between 200 and 400 since there is already an abundance of light. You need to change your ISO when the light changes. If there's bright sunlight and you're shooting outdoors, you'll need to use a smaller ISO number to ensure the image is not overexposed like the one here. The second photo is the same shot with the proper ISO set at a lower 200 to adjust to the bright sunlight. One more important factor with ISO is that the higher you push it, the more grain you will experience in your photos, so it's best to keep it as low as possible, unless you're shooting extremely dark scenes. Now that you know the 3 basic settings for a DSLR camera, you can take your camera with you on your next hike. And remember, it'll get easier with time and practice makes perfect.